All right, yesterday we were the first here on Sky to bring you the news that once again, sadly, Victoria's ambulance system's been forced to declare a code red emergency in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Now, this is the fifth such code red this year, and it meant that between midnight Monday and 4 a.m. on Tuesday, there were no ambulances available in metropolitan Melbourne, not one. Now, it's a situation that's been steadily getting worse over the past year or so, and still the government was out there today trying to blame it all on Victorians, they say, who called 000 when they shouldn't. Joining me now is the Victorian Shadow Minister for Police and Emergency Services, former Victoria Police Officer Brad Battin. Brad, we've been talking about this crisis for months and months now. How is it that things are only getting worse?
Peter, it comes down to this simple fact that the Andrews Labor government have failed to invest and prepare. It's no longer an excuse of COVID. It is simply outright because they've failed to invest in this system. Paramedics are speaking about it. 000 operators are speaking about it. The union's speaking up about it. The only people that want to try and hide the fact is the Andrews Labor government.
What about this blame game today we saw from the government and chiming in late this afternoon was the ambulance union saying the problem is that people are calling 000 when they haven't really got an emergency. Now, I call BS on that because the ambulance wouldn't pick you up if you didn't have an emergency. But they clearly are picking up people who do have an emergency, and then we have that ramping at the hospital system. So those who can get an ambulance, they're taken away because they need critical care and they're ramping. That's not related to people wrongly calling 000.
Yeah, we've always said people who call 000 should be doing it in emergency, but the problem the government's trying to put out there now is, like we've seen too often, they want to blame anyone but themselves. And we've got case after case of people who have called an ambulance, gone to hospital, and exactly as you said, Peter, they're then getting caught up in ramping. We had one just recently, an 80-year-old lady who was stuck on a trolley outside the hospital for 8 hours in a tent. That is simply not good enough. The system is failing because you can't offload people into the hospital. The issue isn't just with ambulance. There's a whole crisis through our health network. You can't get through on 000. There mightn't be an ambulance available. You get stuck in ramping, and it all goes back to the fact that we haven't got a proper system to hand them over in the hospitals. That's because the Andrews Labor government, again, they'll blame COVID, but the reality is it's lack of investment, lack of planning, and lack of ensuring that Victorians can get those calls answered when they need to. We need to fix the emergency system. We will make sure that happens by building more hospitals and ensuring people can get the treatment and care they need when they need it.
Yeah, there's three separate issues. There's one where you make the call and does your call get answered? Then the decision's taken by the person who answers the call, whether you warrant an ambulance or not. And then is there an ambulance available? And then if you are critical and you were in an ambulance, can you get out of the ambulance and actually into a hospital? And they try and conflate this as a blame game against Victorians as opposed to taking responsibility. Another issue, I've got to come back to your former job as a cop before you went into politics. I know it's also part of your shadow portfolio, but we know in Melbourne, over the weekend, we saw someone shot, a bikie, a former bikie shot, attempted execution at a Faulkner funeral. Some are saying that this is the start of Melbourne's gangland wars again. I was surprised to find that Victoria is a long way behind New South Wales and Queensland when it comes to legislation to deal with bikie gangs. We don't ban the patches, the insignia here. There's not the same tough anti-association laws that we see interstate. Victoria's had a crime underbelly for years. We all know about that. So why haven't we got the laws in place to help the police do what the police can do interstate, but not in Melbourne?
Yeah, quite simply, and this one's a very easy one, the Andrews Labor government were given legislation that they decided to shorten and weaken, and therefore it's not as powerful as in New South Wales and Queensland. They were warned by senior police, and now they've created Victoria as a bikie's paradise. We can't go back to the Carlton Cruise of the past and the violence we had on the streets, and we're starting to see it now. Daniel Andrews needs to act. We haven't got time to wait for the election on this one. We need to ensure that legislation is strengthened so bikies can get back out of our state. We don't want them here. They're not welcome.
Why doesn't the government consult with you, Brad, you and the opposition? Why aren't they talking to you and say, hey, can't we have an extraordinary sitting of the parliament, or can't we both work on legislation and get it through? This should be above politics.
Yeah, I'm open to that, Peter, every day of the week if they want to come and talk to me. We've got experience on our side from within the Victoria Police, but it's the arrogance of the government that they know best every time. And that's proven when Daniel Andrews handpicked his own deputy just recently against what his own party wanted. If he won't listen to his own party, as if he's going to listen to the opposition, and it's an arrogant government that's out of touch, and they don't care about the crime on the street, they care about politics and how it plays out in the media.
Brad Battin, got to leave it there. Thank you for your time. I can see you're at footy training by the look of the screen behind you, so let's hope it all goes well.